Hey guys, so in today's video, I'm going to be talking about should you be tracking your nutritional intake throughout the year as a competitor in the 4 phases of a contest season that I believe competitors should be going through and why. So I wrote an article on my website. If you haven't gone to it already, I encourage you to access the articles and blogs. All you have to do is become a free member, and then you're going to get tons of access to tons of information, and I will be loading more and more into my site as time goes on. So I wanted to talk about this because it tends to be something that comes up frequently because let's face it, it's easy to become really, really exhausted through your process throughout the year. And you may ask yourself, is it important to track my nutritional intake throughout the year? Is it okay to take diet breaks and macro tracking breaks? And the short answer of that is yes. The long answer of that is it's complicated. And I'm going to explain to you why I have that belief system and how I like to break it down with my clients throughout the year. And for me as a coach, this isn't something that just sort of came about. It's years and years of working with competitors and seeing a pattern and seeing a dynamic and understanding metabolism and the science of adaptation that I've started working with my clients in this type of a system. So to answer the question more thoroughly, we have to break down the competitive season into 4 phases. If you hear click, 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 it's my little pug Beano. She's pacing around, waiting for me to go lay on the couch because she thinks that's where I should be right now on my laptop, not in my office on my main hub. So I'm going to break these down into 4 phases, which is going to help you understand your nutritional intake and how it should be done as a competitor, where to place it, and when diet breaks are more achievable and when they're not. And the question isn't so much should you or shouldn't you, it's more of upon your personal relationship with food and the dynamic as a competitor, whether you want to make improvements year to year or if you're totally satisfied with the status quo. So I'm going to break it down into 4 seasons. First season is off season, so preseason or off season. That season can either be used for putting on muscle, or if it's preseason and you are way overweight, then you would be trying to get leaner during that preseason. But you shouldn't have to have a preseason if you are an experienced competitor. So I'll explain that more as we go. Phase 2 would be in season. This would be your contest prep. Phase 3 would be post-show, or what people call their reverse diet process. And phase 4 would be maintenance. And I find phase 4 is the one that people don't like to be in and they tend to skip. Mind my voice right now. I have been sick for 2 weeks and with a respiratory infection, so it sounds a lot worse than it is at this point. So if you're not interested in improving your physique or your metabolic capacity, then read no further. Or don't watch anymore, don't read the blog, nothing. There's no point. But if you want to have a healthier metabolism and improve your physique, then this information is definitely for you. I also want to point out that competing in multiple contests per year requires serious planning ahead. So try to look at this video as a planning and plotting session as opposed to is this a personal attack on how I've been prepping? So give you some ideas of how to move ahead, and spreading too many shows out over multiple months will leave you burnt out and exhausted. It's also going to make your body that much more tricky to work with. And in my experience, it can go one of 2 ways. Either metabolism goes into overdrive and we have a hard time keeping the food intake up enough for a client, or it's the opposite, the body starts stalling out, and I'm going to talk about that in another video on another day. It can also leave your hormones and metabolism in a place that require a lengthy recovery time, which can be accumulative over time. So a year of cycling through these phases may not be long enough. And when you're looking at the 4 phases that I'm talking about, you may want to look at this as a 2-year process or an 18-month process, not just a 12-month process. It just may not be long enough to do in 1 year, pending your body, pending your metabolic capacity, pending what you've done in the past to get where you are. And as a side bit of information, just so you guys know, while your body may not show signs of adaptation immediately, this can be accumulative over time, which can be misleading and tricky to mentally grasp, but metabolism is dynamic. So it is constantly changing and evolving, and the cells are constantly changing and evolving as well. So your hormonal adaptation becomes accumulative. So while you may be in this position right now where everything feels great and all is good and you're not putting on weight, that may catch up with you at a certain point. As an example, I see a lot of bikini girls hopping onto thyroid medication or clenbuterol as fat loss regimes that don't see the consequences of their thyroid enzyme conversion change until long after the medication is tapered out of the body. Okay, so even in a medicated thyroid patient who gets regular blood work, it takes 6 weeks for it to reach the cells within the body and penetrate completely. So imagine as you are tapering off this medication, the accumulative effects long term. So you must think about all these things from a health perspective. And I'm working with natural athletes. So my clients aren't using thyroid, they're not using clenbuterol, they're not using drugs, but if you are someone that is going down that route, your process is going to be slightly different, and that you are going to need to, if you want to maintain your health and you want to maintain competing, look at this more than in a short-term window. So phase 1, this is your off season. And if you're a new competitor, this could be your pre-diet phase. This could be where you are building up your metabolism, building up your caloric bank, building up your body. This is where you make improvements in terms of adding muscle and improving your metabolism. To keep this really simple, if during this phase you do not have a bit of a grasp of your nutritional intake, you could be shortchanging both aspects. So you may not be eating enough to put on mass. You may not be getting enough protein in if you don't know what you're intaking to create protein synthesis and allow for hypertrophy to happen and muscle growth. So it is actually important for you to have a baseline at this point to know what your nutritional intake is at. Do you need to be myopic and a perfectionist and absolute at this point in time? No. But you definitely want to have an established caloric intake and ceiling to be working with. The same goes for your metabolism. And without building your calories up, you will be placing yourself in this position of going deeper into a caloric deficit than potentially necessary. Now, just as a side note, how much you eat in your off season does not mean that's how much your body can utilize in a caloric deficit. This is a big mistake I see competitors make. It's like, well, I can eat 3,000 calories a day in my off season and maintain my set point. I should be able to get shredded on 2,500 calories a day. Not true, not accurate. So having a baseline idea of your intake is valuable as a competitor and should still be an aspect of your off-season nutrition. That said, you should be able to have wiggle room, remove obsessive thinking, and enjoy time off the clock. I have found that certain types of competitors cannot logically balance this out if they are A-type driven and they are perfectionists, because they place too much stress on being perfect, and this can result in burnout and long-term consequences emotionally with their relationship with food. If you are this type of person, you should be doing some coaching in your off season, and I highly recommend that you work on that mental aspect of yourself so that you can have more longevity. Which brings me to the next phase, which is phase 2. If you don't know your baseline going into phase 2, this may mean that you spend wasted time establishing your caloric deficit baseline, and this could be problematic for the coach and the client. During this phase, your goal is to hold on to as much lean tissue as possible within a caloric deficit. If you are underfeeding from the get-go, this sets up for one heck of a ride when it comes to the holding on to your muscle tissue. You're going to be in a catabolic phase throughout the whole time, and it places you in a disadvantage hormonally. It makes sense that when you begin your prep, you want to ensure that your body fat levels are not too high. So that's another reason why in phase 1, you want to ensure that you know what your caloric intake is, so you're not eating so much that you're putting on excess amount of tissue. You have enough time to get to stage ready body fat levels, and you have enough calories to pull from as you need to. If you're starting your prep and you're already in these suboptimal caloric levels, you're going to have nowhere to go. Same with the high activity levels. And you want to make sure your activity levels are not too high so you can preserve tissue and avoid more hormonal adaptation. Stress is an adaptatory state in the body as well. Far too often we see women trying to stay too lean in the off season with excess cardio and lower food intake, struggle in a contest prep caloric deficit because there are minimal variables to play with. If this is the case, then you should be going back to phase 1 or phase 4, which I discuss ahead. It is expected that during a contest prep, you're going to utilize cardio and a caloric deficit to get to your goal. But if you're too far off the mark, body fat is too high, you're potentially shortchanging yourself and you're not necessarily going to come into shape you desire without forcing the body into an absolute caloric deficit, which results in feeling worse in a potential hormonal rebound. Another thing that I want to point out here is for those of you that have followed a reverse diet process to improve your metabolic capacity and then found yourself struggling when you go to cut and diet because you got your food up to a certain ceiling and then your body was kind of trickier to respond while you were dieting, that doesn't necessarily mean your reverse diet process was a flop. It may mean that you need to reverse diet again and allow the body more time to heal. I've seen that over and over again. The thing is, most people are kind of putting themselves into two categories, contest prep or off season, and then they're missing these other stages, and it's perpetuating a potential metabolic disaster. Phase 3, post-contest. This is the one where most people panic, and to be honest with you, they overcomplicate. You have to understand your body is an adapted state in contest prep. So, depending upon how you got there, you need to come out of there. It is important that in the right hormonal environment, you do not have to rebound or overshoot set point. But oftentimes I see women negating the important other phases of their competitive season and dieting off rebounds. If you find yourself overshooting your set point like post-show within 1 to 12 weeks, you should not be planning your next contest date without addressing a long maintenance cycle first to allow for hormonal function to return and your body to sit at set point for a period of time. During the contest phase, you want to focus on slowly bringing post-contest phase, slowly bringing calories up to maintenance through a reverse diet or gradual dieting process. This can be done in one of 3 ways. Reverse diet by increasing calories initially by 300 and slowly increasing each week through a reverse diet process. This includes reducing activity levels as well. Increase calories to maintenance and allow the body to reestablish homeostasis through being patient. So what would happen then is your body may go back to set point faster, but you may feel better quicker. And I find that some women need to go back to maintenance faster than others, pending their relationship with food and their biofeedback. If they're feeling super crappy, keeping them leaner for longer is not necessarily going to be the solution. Sometimes we're only avoiding and prolonging the inevitable by completing a slow, drawn-out reverse. And the client is better served emotionally and physically by going into maintenance calories post-show. I've had it where a lot of girls have said to me, I want to come out of this as slowly as possible and hold my condition for as long as I can. And those tend to be the same girls that look back on it and say, I wish I hadn't done that. So if the reverse dieting process is resulting in binge eating or overfeeding or myopic thinking that is causing rapid weight regain or an obsessive mindset, does not serve you well to underfeed than overfeed, as metabolic rate has not adapted to the heavy caloric intake, and due to the biology of weight control, you will regain quickly. So finally, if those 2 methods backfire, then you could go to an intuitive eating style. But in order to be able to intuitively eat, you already have to have established a healthy relationship with food and a flexible approach to dieting so that you can expand your repertoire beyond the 5 foods. Because in that recovery post-show phase, you want your digestive tract to be getting back in balance. You want your hormones back in balance. And it's also very normal to feel exhausted during the post-show and fed up. So a lot of girls will feel like they want to give up on the reverse process because you're physically and emotionally exhausted and you may be burnt out with tracking or meal planning. It's normal. Your preoccupation with food and appetite signals will be up due to the biology of weight control. You can't kind of get around those things. So your mental fortitude is really what decides the determining factor here, as well as your physiology and what your body is doing at a biological level. A good mindset regarding post-show going into your prep will help the post-show pendulum swing. But I love when girls are like 6 weeks out and they've decided that that's going to be their forever home body, and then they're massively disappointed when they find out it is very hard to hold on to post-show. You going back to set point, to homeostasis, is a beautiful thing. And you want your body to get there in a nice fashion without the slingshot of overshooting set point. If that is happening, that is an indicator that you need more time in the next phase, which is maintenance. And this, to me, is the holy grail, the bee's knees, the cat's meow of progress, because this is where all your hormonal function resets itself. This is where your body sets up to be able to do a bulk and a hypertrophy phase, and to really lay down muscle tissue. This is where metabolism improves. This is where you get to have a little bit more of a life and chill out a little bit and take your vacations and more time off the clock, because there's less checks and balances and your body's just allowing to be in synchronicity. And hopefully at this point, your menstrual cycles have returned and they're working themselves out. They're balancing out. Your relationship with food is improving because your hunger signals are more satisfied and you're able to have a stronger sense of satiety and fullness, and your digestive tract is improved. Don't panic here and think you're not doing anything, because at a cellular level, you are generating everything. And a lot of girls shortchange this phase because it's not super exciting. You're still training, you're still progressive overloading, you're still going for it, but you're not doing it in a fashion where you're pushing anything on the body either way. And you're gonna wanna stay in this phase if you notice or are experiencing the following: digestive stress, if you're still having food intolerances, heavy water retention after meals off plan or throughout the day. So if you wake up and your water levels go up throughout the day, your aldosterone hormone is not balanced, and that's problematic. Lack of menstrual cycle or hormonal imbalances, such as heavy PMS or even heavy ovulation. Heavy ovulation, heavy PMS are not good things. That means that there is an estrogen-progesterone imbalance, and you want that to be sorted out before you go into a contest phase, or even before you go into a building phase where you add more food in your body, potentially adding more body fat, and hormones store in fat cells. So you do not want to be pushing the food through a point in time when your hormones are not adjusted. This would be the best time for annual blood work and to check your thyroid markers, your endocrine hormones, your kidneys, your liver, all of your markers: cortisol, progesterone, DHEA, testosterone. I could go on and on and on. This is the time to do it. Not just after your show when your body is still trying to recover itself, because as food levels come up and you get back to homeostasis, your hormones are going to balance as well. And in order for your next prep to be a success in regard to energy balance and fat loss, you have to create a hormonal environment that favors you. So the argument of tracking nutritional intake year round, I think if you review what I'm saying and look at your long-term game planning, it is safe to say that having a general idea of your intake will help you have a better prep the next season. And like I said in the beginning, for some of you, this isn't a 1-year process. This needs to be 18 months, 2 years. But there's all this like, I got to get to the stage right now thing going on. And that's not necessarily the right thing for your hormonal and metabolic environment or your ability to make progress and add mass like you would like to. You know, it's really important to keep remembering these 4 things. In contest prep, you must be on track. You must be diligent. In your immediate post-show, it is important to be bringing calories up and calories down and cardio down methodically. Otherwise, you can and will rebound. And if you have to diet off a rebound, that sets you back further. In the maintenance phase, you kind of have to have a good idea of your baseline, but you kind of get to chill a little bit here. That's the holy grail. And in your off season, it is essential for growth and potential increased metabolic function to ensure you're eating enough food, but also ensuring you're not eating too much food that you add excess adipose tissue that you then have to diet off, which could become catabolic while you are in contest prep in a caloric deficit and your energy balance is changing. So if you need some help and some understanding of this and you want some guidance, feel free to set up a consult with me by clicking into my website, jenniferkirstenfitness.com, and you'll see book a free consult. Or if the video was helpful for you for just navigating your own contest prep, cool. I'm happy to at least send the information out there. So remember, 4 phases, not 2. You don't need to be dieting and rebounding. Bye, guys.